Chapter 3. Superman.
So here I am, doing everything I can, holding on to what I am, pretending I'm a Superman.
They were late. Izuku shifted his feet and checked his phone. It was only 20 minutes past the time that he and Kirishima had agreed to meet, but Izuku had been diligent as usual and arrived early. He'd been standing inside the doors of the darkened entryway for over half an hour now. Part of him wanted to walk around and get a better look at the place, but the other half of him was worried that he'd miss the group entirely if he left. This location was very different from the Hard Luck Bar. It was an actual concert venue, for one. Izuku had never been to it, but he'd heard of it. The main act was still a ways off from playing and the place was already filling up. Izuku toyed with his camera as a group of people passed through the doors. The attendees looked familiar but, at the same time, different. Izuku saw a lot of black again, but this time the men either had extremely long hair or none at all. At least he'd come prepared. Izuku didn't stand out quite so much in his plain black t-shirt and casual jeans. He'd thought about wearing his new the Anti-Heroes band shirt but wasn't sure if that was considered improper concert etiquette. It wasn't their show, after all. He'd also braved the cool evening air without a jacket after what had happened to his poor plaid button-up. It had been 5 days since then and his black eye only remained as a faint bruise circling his eye.
Hey, Midoriya.
Izuku looked up from his camera and smiled when he saw red hair and a toothy grin, a sudden wave of nervousness passing over him as Kirishima approached. He was accompanied by a woman that Izuku did not recognize. It was both exciting and nerve-wracking, meeting up with the members of a band. Was this really okay? Kirishima raised a hand to high-five Izuku, who returned the gesture enthusiastically, albeit a bit awkwardly.
Kirishima.
Izuku said.
Thank you for inviting me. No problem, bro.
Kirishima said.
Minnie's real excited to meet you, and we have business to take care of anyways.
He winked.
This is a pretty cool venue. You should get some good shots here.
Kirishima's companion observed the exchange silently, a single brow raised. Her deep violet hair was cut in an androgynous style, her bangs blunt and the back angled up into a sharp bob. She wore a black leather jacket and a long, ripped shirt. A pair of earbuds dangled loosely around her neck. The most interesting thing about her to Izuku, though, was the strange triangular markings on her cheeks. He couldn't tell if they were makeup or tattoos.
So, this is the photographer,
she murmured, the corners of her mouth twitching. She surveyed Izuku up and down.
He looks like a roadie.
Izuku was caught off guard and looked down at himself, surveying his appearance. Did he? He thought he'd done better this time. Kirishima placed a friendly hand on the woman's shoulder.
Jiro, this is Mina Izuku.
The woman extended a hand, and Izuku tentatively shook it, not knowing entirely how to react to this person.
Midoriya, this is Jiro Kyoka. She's a friend of the band. A friend of the band?
Jiro drawled, turning to look at Kirishima.
I'm hurt.
Kirishima laughed jovially, patting Jiro on the back.
Jiro is a sound producer.
He explained.
She records and mixes all of our tracks. She actually has a pretty nifty studio right in her apartment. Built it myself. Oh, wow. Really?
Izuku said, his eyes lighting up.
You put together all the tracks? Does that mean you get to hear everything first?
Izuku may or may not have purchased digital copies of the entire discography of the Anti-Heroes over the past few days. Jiro stared at Izuku in bewilderment, then started to laugh.
Hey, Ijiro,
she said.
I thought you said you weren't going to befriend fans anymore.
Kirishima laughed a little uneasily, glancing between his two companions.
Jiro,
he started, lowering his voice.
It's not like that. Bakugo's gonna be really pissed if he finds out this guy's a groupie.
Jiro grinned.
I'll make sure to stick around to watch the fireworks.
Izuku wasn't following the conversation at all, but he sensed he'd maybe been a little over-enthusiastic.
I don't exactly understand,
he said, raising his camera.
I'm just here to take pictures.
Jiro opened her mouth to reply when a sudden shrieking filled the air behind Izuku, followed by a heavy weight thrown into his side. Izuku staggered, just barely keeping his balance as he caught a flash of neon pink hair. Thank God for his camera strap.
Izuku!
Pinky screamed into his ear. She looked at Kirishima expectantly. This is him, right? When the drummer nodded, the woman resumed screeching, wrapping her arms around Izuku's neck and hopping up and down. Izuku, bright red and at a total loss for words, could only stare at the face a few inches from his own. It wasn't covered in pink today, but her hair was as vibrant as ever and she was still wearing those strange contacts.
Hello?
He tried, struggling to maintain both his composure and balance.
Hi,
the woman said, laughing freely. She planted a big kiss on Izuku's cheek, a resounding smack striking the air. If Izuku was red before, he was absolutely scarlet now.
I'm Ashido Mina, but you can call me Pinky, or Mina, or whatever. Hey, Mina.
Kirishima said, his smile starting to look a little strained.
You're gonna scare him off.
Mina pouted, releasing Izuku, then took a couple steps back and smiled widely.
You are my new favorite person, Midori Zuku.
Midoriya Izuku, she announced, pointing a finger at his nose.
Me? Yes, yes.
Mina resumed hopping up and down.
Ah, you took so many cool photos of us. That jump shot you got of me, it was so sharp. They usually end up too blurry to use. I'm glad you liked them so much.
Izuku replied earnestly, trying to keep up with the pink-haired hurricane. Mina nodded enthusiastically.
I did. When I got the message from Ground Zero, I just couldn't wait. So I posted them right away.
She punched the air.
Bam!
She exclaimed.
Just like that.
Izuku was starting to understand why the members of the anti-heroes made such a good trio. The amount of energy each of them gave off was extraordinary, if different in their own ways.
Thank you.
He said happily.
It's been really great for me, too.
Between the photographs that the band had posted and the ones that Izuku had added to his own pages, he had gained over 100 new followers in a span of 4 days. Mina grinned, finally diverting her attention to the other members of the group.
Kyoka?
She said sweetly, giving the woman a big hug before positioning herself beside Kirishima and nonchalantly looping her arm through his.
Kiri?
She said.
Everyone's here now, right?
Kirishima watched the girl drape herself over his arm, then shook his head as if to clear it.
Yeah,
he said, looking at Izuku and Jiro sheepishly before tilting his head towards the venue's interior. Izuku hesitated. He started.
Aren't we still...
Kirishima looked a bit puzzled before his brows shot up.
Oh, right.
He said.
I forgot to mention. Bakugo. That's Ground Zero. He got held up at work. He's gonna be late.
Kirishima grabbed Izuku's shoulder, leading him in with Mina still attached to his other arm.
I'll give you a proper introduction when he gets here.
Bakugo. Izuku pushed back a swell of nervous excitement. He still wasn't sure what to make of the guy. Izuku had never met anyone that intense before, and they'd barely even spoken.
Great,
he said, allowing himself to be led. Izuku forgot his thoughts as they entered the auditorium, a quiet gasp of appreciation on his lips. The mid-size space still held relics of its past as an opera house. Though the seats had long since been ripped out, the old stage remained and thick red curtains still hung from either side. The tall pillars winding around the mouth of the stage were ornately carved, meeting at the top in an elaborate crest. It was quite beautiful. Izuku was struck by how odd it was that the place apparently had a reputation for heavy metal acts. The current one on stage was belting out lyrics in a register so low and raspy that Izuku had no idea what the guy was saying. Kirishima watched as Izuku stared open-mouthed at the stage, a self-satisfied smile on his face. He tapped Izuku's shoulder to get his attention and gestured towards the bar.
I'm grabbing a beer. You want anything?
He asked loudly over the music. Izuku glanced down at his camera.
I think I'm going to check out this place a little bit first, if that's alright.
He replied. Kirishima nodded.
Do your thing, man.
He said, bringing his hands to his face and miming a photograph.
If you need anything, just look for the red hair.
He grinned and pointed at his head for emphasis. Izuku laughed. There was some truth to that, even in the gloom Kirishima's spiked hair was vibrant enough to stand out.
Yeah.
He said.
If you need me, just look for the awkward guy skulking around like he's trying to hide.
Jiro suggested. Mina smacked the woman playfully and they burst into giggles.
You're terrible.
Mina scolded, not seeming bothered in the slightest.
They're just messing with you.
Kirishima reassured Izuku, biting his lip to keep a smile back. He scratched the back of his head.
We'll meet up later, yeah? Yeah.
Izuku said confidently.
It was nice to meet you both.
he said to the girls, who smiled and nodded in return. As Izuku was walking away, he heard Mina say,
What a cutie. Can we keep him?
Izuku got to work after that, scoping out the old opera house and its acts. He felt a little sorry he hadn't come here before. It was a gorgeous place. The old balconies along the sides of the stage still remained, and Izuku wondered if it was safe to go up there as he snapped a photograph. Part of him wanted to return to Kirishima, but Izuku was in work mode now, and the fire that had been lit inside of him due to his new success was burning brightly. He wasn't going to miss this opportunity. Izuku weaved amongst the crowd slowly. There were easily hundreds of people here, and it had gotten even more crowded since the main act had taken the stage. Unlike the show at the Hard Luck Bar, the mosh pit was fairly contained to an area 20 or so feet back from the stage. Izuku debated braving it, but the sheer number of headbangers gave him pause. They looked like they had even less control than the crowd at the punk show. He should probably invest in a backup camera if he was going to do this regularly. Izuku took a number of photographs of the performance, getting as close as he dared. This was obviously a popular group, and they played with clear years of experience. It made for a surprisingly refined show, but Izuku found himself preferring the more DIY feel and aesthetic of the anti-heroes. There was something about them that just felt so earnest. As the band transitioned into another song, Izuku wondered how long it had been since he'd parted from Kirishima. He debated checking back with him and the others. He hadn't seen them in the mass at the front. Maybe Bakugo had finally arrived, and the thought made his stomach tighten. Izuku internally chided himself. He was just another guy, he reminded himself. Just another incredibly attractive, incredibly talented guy. Setting his thoughts firmly aside, Izuku started scouring the venue for signs of the drummer. It took him a good number of minutes before he spotted a familiar flash of red near the back of the venue. As he approached the man, Izuku caught no glimpse of the girls, but he could see that Kirishima was definitely with someone. Kirishima glanced Izuku's way, then smiled and waved him over.
There you are,
he said. The man standing next to him turned his head. In his mind, Izuku had decided that the blood red of Bakugo's eyes had only looked so intense because of all the black grease paint around them. He could see now that he was mistaken. Even without the makeup, Bakugo's eyes burned with a fierceness that seemed impossible to contain. His eyes were a crimson fire, uncontrolled and wild. Kirishima was saying something, but all Izuku could hear was the blood rushing in his ears as he looked at the thick, sturdy muscle of Bakugo's neck and the way his black shirt tightened around his biceps. His pants were dirty with a light-colored dust, and there was a dark smudge on his cheek under his left eye. Bakugo shifted his weight, his eyes remaining on Izuku. It was the eyes that got him the most. He could feel their pressure as the blonde focused in on him. Izuku blinked. No, he really was focusing on him. Bakugo's arms were folded and his eyes were getting narrower and narrower as he stared Izuku down. Izuku was trapped in his gaze, unsure of what was happening. Finally Bakugo tilted his head, a flicker of recognition passing behind his eyes.
Deku,
he said, unfolding his arms, and Kirishima slapped his hand to his forehead as Izuku gaped.
No, buddy.
Kirishima said, putting a hand on Bakugo's shoulder.
I told you, remember? His name's Midoriya. Midoriya Izuku.
The redhead looked at Izuku apologetically. The blonde shrugged, reaching his hand up to the side of his neck and cracking it.
Whatever.
The redhead groaned in defeat.
Midoriya,
he said, addressing Izuku.
This is Bako Katsuki, our ground zero.
Izuku extended a hand that he swore wasn't shaking towards the blonde, who stared at him as though he'd grown a second head. Bakugo glared at Kirishima.
The hell you introducing us for? We already met, didn't we? Not properly.
Kirishima replied easily, and for a second Izuku seriously thought Bakugo was going to punch the guy. He remembered what Kaminari had told him about the blonde and lowered his hand. Yet despite his concern, a small part of Izuku was triumphant that he'd finally learned Bakugo's full name.
It's nice to meet you anyways,
Izuku said. He almost immediately regretted his words when those eyes snapped back towards him.
I need a drink,
Katsuki said, and he stalked off. Izuku released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding after the blonde left.
Is he always like that?
Izuku asked Kirishima once he was sure Katsuki was out of hearing range. Kirishima laughed. Izuku didn't understand what was so funny.
Pretty much.
The redhead said.
It's gotten a bit more intense since we started taking the whole band thing seriously, I guess.
He smiled warmly at Midoriya.
Don't worry about it. Most people get used to him pretty fast.
Izuku had so many things he wanted to say to this, but the blonde had already returned, 3 bottles in hand. He said nothing as he roughly shoved one into Izuku's hands, and then Kirishima's.
Oh my god, you didn't have to...
Izuku started, completely shocked, but one foul look from Katsuki caused him to interrupt himself.
Thank you.
He squeaked, clamping his mouth shut.
Hey, thanks man.
Kirishima said to Katsuki, taking a healthy swig from his bottle. Izuku timidly followed suit. He wasn't much of a beer drinker, but this one had been given to him by Ground Zero of all people, and he was going to stand there and enjoy it. Or at least drink it.
Being face around?
Katsuki grumbled, raising his own bottle.
Yeah.
Kirishima said.
I think Jiro recruited her into helping her pick up women again.
Katsuki snorted. Izuku, wanting to be part of the conversation, tried to pick a safe topic.
Kirishima said you were working late.
He said to Katsuki after a lull. The blonde was impassive.
So?
Izuku gulped.
So?
He started.
You work and you're in a band? You must be pretty busy. We all do.
Kirishima chirped, elbowing Izuku in the ribs.
Gotta fund the habits somehow, you know.
He raised a tragic hand to his brow.
It's a hard life for us starving artists. You're not starving.
Katsuki muttered.
What do you do then?
Izuku wanted to know.
Road work.
Kirishima replied.
The weird shifts make it easier to travel for shows. Plus, it pays well.
He winked.
Oh.
Izuku said.
That makes sense.
He looked at Katsuki expectantly.
He's just a regular person.
Izuku thought, and the blonde sighed and rolled his eyes.
Explosives technician.
He said simply. Izuku was thrown.
What, like bomb squad?
He asked excitedly.
That's so...
Izuku was interrupted by Kirishima's sudden, loud laughter. Confused, Izuku glanced back and forth between the bandmates, feeling rather disturbed by the look on Katsuki's face. The blonde's features had contorted into the expression of one who was deeply offended, his mouth pinched and brow furrowed.
What, you think I'm a cop?
Katsuki said with the most disdain Izuku had ever heard someone speak of that profession in.
What's wrong with you?
Izuku was at a loss, baffled by the blonde's twisted mouth and flared nostrils.
I don't... Cop!
Katsuki repeated in disbelief, taking a step towards Izuku. Kirishima stopped laughing long enough to put his free hand out in front of Katsuki's chest.
Whoa there, easy bud.
He said, not unkindly. Kirishima glanced at Izuku, and he looked like he might start laughing again.
He doesn't get it, man. Look at him.
Look at him. Katsuki snarled. Izuku's heart hammered in his chest. The blonde stood there unmoving for a long moment before he spoke again.
Construction...
he said, and Kirishima dropped his hand as the blonde stepped back.
Wrecking buildings... like that.
He jerked his head toward Kirishima.
Same company.
He said.
And we're out of there the moment we blow up.
Izuku made the mistake of continuing to speak.
Isn't that pretty dangerous?
He asked.
Maybe if you're an idiot.
Katsuki roared, nearly dropping his bottle as he violently twisted back towards Izuku, and Izuku almost wet his pants. Kirishima took this in stride.
Hey, Bakugo, you didn't see danger earlier, did you?
He asked, abruptly changing the subject. Katsuki gave Izuku a scathing glare.
No?
He said.
Don't know where that hole is. We should find him before the show's over.
Kirishima said cheerfully, nudging the blonde suggestively. Katsuki gave Kirishima one hell of a stink eye.
Don't tell me what to do,
he said. He ran a hand through his messy spikes, then pulled his phone from his pocket. Reading something on the screen, Katsuki growled.
Gotta handle something,
he said. He threw his head back and finished his beer in one gulp, then turned on his heel. He proceeded to slam the empty bottle down on the bar counter before heading to the exit, already furiously typing out some sort of reply. Izuku stared at his own beer, barely touched. He felt as though his knees were about to give out. What the hell had just happened? He looked at Kirishima.
Did I do something wrong?
He asked anxiously. Kirishima snickered.
Depends on you, ask.
He said, shooting Izuku a cryptic smirk. He finished his own beer, then nodded towards Izuku's camera.
You get anything good?
Izuku wanted to know what Kirishima meant by that, but he thought he shouldn't press too hard.
I think so.
He said, trying to balance both his camera and beer between his hands. He took Kirishima through a few pictures, and the drummer nodded in approval.
You have a good eye for this stuff.
He said amiably.
How long you been taking concert photos for? Not very long.
Izuku admitted.
Your show was kinda my first. Damn.
The redhead said.
That explains a lot.
Izuku looked at him with a puzzled expression.
If this is what your beginner stuff looks like, though,
Kirishima continued with a mischievous smile.
I can't wait to see what happens when you get good.
Izuku was taken aback by the sudden compliment. He beamed. He really liked Kirishima. He had a way of taking all the tension out of a room.
I think that's one of the nicest things anyone's ever said to me.
Izuku said. Kirishima just shrugged and smiled. Not long after Mina and Jiro returned, both with half-empty drinks. They were all flushes and smiles.
Any luck?
Kirishima asked, and the girls nodded.
I got 2 numbers.
Jiro said, a triumphant look on her face.
I'm a great wing woman.
Mina added.
It's amazing what a little imaginary competition does.
Izuku started to laugh but cut himself off when he felt a rough hand grab his shoulder from behind. He went as stiff as a board. Kirishima, noticing Izuku's reaction, glanced over and smiled.
Ah, Bakugo.
He said.
You found him? Yeah.
Came the gruff response. Izuku didn't dare turn his head.
Come on.
Katsuki said, and he released Izuku's shoulder only to seize his arm and drag him off. Izuku stumbled and nearly fell before he caught his feet and turned himself around. Katsuki cut through the crowd like a tank on a mission. His grip was strong. Izuku doubted he'd be able to break free even if he threw his full weight into it. He could feel the rough calluses that had formed on Katsuki's fingertips from years of guitar playing as they scraped against his skin. If Izuku wasn't so scared for his life, he might have reveled in the sensation.
Where are we going?
Izuku asked, a hint of panic in his voice. Katsuki responded by releasing Izuku with a thrust, sending him a step or two forward before he came to a stop at the far end of the bar. A tall, husky man was waiting for them, his hip casually propped against the side of the counter. His thick meaty arms were crossed over the broad expanse of his chest. 20 years ago, the man might have been a football player, but the balding head and gut served as reminders of the present. He looked Izuku up and down, his expression unfriendly.
This him?
The man asked, and a shiver went down Izuku's spine. What had he done now?
Yeah.
Katsuki said. The man's face split into a broad grin that encompassed all his features almost immediately. He reached out, extending his hand to Izuku. Good to meet you, he said enthusiastically.
You take some pretty nice photos.
Izuku was flabbergasted. He stared at the man for a moment before his brain snapped into action, and he reached out and shook his hand. His grip was powerful, and as they shook Izuku had the strange sensation of his arm waving around like one of those tube men in car lots.
Thank you,
he said, glancing at Katsuki. What was going on here? Katsuki ignored him and instead leaned forward on the bar, his elbows propped against the edge. The man laughed, a hearty sound that came straight from the gut.
You sure don't look like much, but I guess talent comes in all shapes,
he said.
The name's Rick Danger. He owns this place,
Katsuki said. Izuku balked.
What? Really?
He looked at the strangely named, heavily built man, the owner of a converted opera house. It didn't seem to fit, but Izuku was fascinated nonetheless. The man laughed again, and Katsuki rolled his eyes as he signaled the bartender for another beer, completely disinterested.
Sure do.
Rick Danger said.
I saw your stuff online.
He jerked his thumb in Katsuki's direction and Katsuki grunted.
Been heckling them to put me in touch with you.
Rick glanced down, his eyes landing on Izuku's camera.
You taking pictures tonight? Let's see what you got. I haven't had a chance to take a good look at them yet,
Izuku said, feeling his neck start to sweat. He wasn't prepared for this at all. Izuku flipped through his photographs as quickly as he could, hoping to at least start on a good one, then carefully took his camera off and over his head. He delicately passed it to the man. The man seemed to know how to handle it at least. Izuku was always a little skittish when it came to passing his expensive piece of equipment to someone else. The man scanned through the images with a serious expression, then passed it back, a smile curling the corners of his mouth.
Not bad,
he said.
I'd like to see what you do with the finals.
The bartender brought Katsuki his beer and he took a swig from it, then set it down. He grabbed the edge of the counter with both hands, stretching his arms as he kept one eye on the exchange.
I'm guessing you're new to this. Am I right? Yeah.
Izuku admitted sheepishly. Katsuki apparently found this to be the wrong answer, because he made a strangled noise in the back of his throat and glared at Izuku, who flinched. Rick ignored the interaction.
How'd you like to get some practice in?
He continued.
Here's the deal. I'll let you into whatever shows you want completely free. All you gotta do is ask for me at the door. You come, you do your thing, then send your photographs my way.
He winked.
Once you get better, I'll even consider paying you. I'd love to.
Izuku exclaimed without hesitation, his hands gripping his camera tightly. Katsuki let his head flop down toward his arms as he grumbled something unintelligible in an exasperated tone. Izuku hadn't been expecting this tonight. The owner of a concert venue had just asked him to be his personal photographer, hadn't he? That meant he was going to get to take pictures of a lot of different bands, right? Concerts were a type of event, after all. It was a start, and Izuku found he was unable to stop himself from smiling. Rick shot Katsuki a dirty look, then turned back to Izuku.
Great,
he said.
You got a business card?
Izuku's expression froze.
Not yet,
he said, kicking himself internally. He was going to have to learn a whole lot about this freelancing business and fast.
But I'm going to make some.
He added quickly, a determined expression taking over his face.
And when they are done, I'll come here and give one to you personally.
Rick slapped a heavy hand on Izuku's shoulder, causing him to wince.
What a go-getter,
he said, aiming a eating smile at Katsuki. The blonde looked up long enough to send the man a withering glare.
I love this kid, don't you?
Katsuki looked like he'd just eaten a lemon.
You just like him because he's easy. Enough of that.
Rick snapped, cutting Katsuki off abruptly. His smile had faded some.
Ease up on the sour grapes. Speaking of which, how the anti-heroes these days?
Katsuki was watching the man with a stormy expression.
We're great,
he said tightly, his voice without amusement. That reminded Izuku of something he'd been meaning to ask.
I was curious,
he said, looking at Katsuki.
How do you two know each other? Have you played here?
Rick snorted, and Katsuki let out a long stream of curses, causing Izuku to take a step back. He was beginning to wonder why he was even trying with the blonde.
Come on now, don't be like that,
Rick said in a friendly enough tone, though there was mischief behind his eyes.
You played here before. That didn't count. Ah, yes.
The man brought a hand to his chin thoughtfully.
It doesn't count unless you're a main act, right, Ground Zero?
Katsuki glowered at him.
You owe us.
Rick sighed.
That I do.
Izuku perked up, intrigued by this new revelation.
What for? None of your business.
Rick smirked.
Now that's no way for a hero to talk. Shut up. You owe us, and you won't keep getting out of it forever. I told you, you're not big enough.
The man gestured around his venue.
You think you can fill a space this size? I'm not calling a loss on your asses. Come back to me when you have a bigger following, and then we'll talk. Your word means crap.
Katsuki spat.
Once you get better,
He looked at Izuku meaningfully.
a bigger following. Tell me what that looks like to you, and I'll do it.
Katsuki must have hit a sore spot, because Rick was no longer smiling.
Fine.
He said, clenching his jaw.
20,000 fans. There you go. Make it happen, and you've got your show.
Izuku almost choked over the number. 20,000? Katsuki straightened himself up, meeting the man with a challenging gaze.
Done,
he said. He held out his hand, and Rick gripped it, neither of them breaking eye contact.
I'm gonna hold you to that, so don't even try to squirm your way out.
Izuku felt as though he was watching war being declared. He could see the muscles straining in both of the men's arms.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Rick said.
We're gonna blowing up real soon. Next thing you know, you'll be begging us to come here, and we won't have time for your venue anymore. I'll believe it when I see.
Katsuki snarled, releasing Rick's hand. Still maintaining eye contact, he grabbed his beer from the counter then turned and left, leaving Izuku behind. Rick watched him go, a look of extreme distaste on his face.
Frickin' prick,
he said under his breath, and Izuku was inclined to agree. You friends with him?
Me? Oh, no.
Izuku said, waving his arms frantically.
We barely know each other. That's probably for the best.
Rick said.
You're a good guy, right, Midoriya? Count on you? Of course, sir.
Izuku said immediately. He was glad that Katsuki's behavior hadn't fouled this new relationship for him, even if the blonde had been the one to introduce them. There was something niggling at the back of his mind though.
I hope you don't mind me asking.
Izuku started slowly.
But what is it that you owe him?
He might be prying, but their heated exchange had only made Izuku more curious. Rick sighed wearily.
That.
He said.
Well, if you really want to know.
He leaned forward, lowering his voice.
About 8 months or so back, our buddy Bakugo and his crew were at a show here when some guy turned up with a knife. Seemed he was the jilted ex-lover of a girl attending and wanted revenge. He attacked the girl, got a stabbing before Bakugo caught whiff of what was going on. He disarmed the guy single-handedly and withheld him down until the cops arrived. The other two dealt with the girl, but pressure on the wound. She was fine in the end.
He shook his head.
It was real bad, but it could have been worse. I made the mistake of telling Bakugo I owed him one after the police left. He took it pretty literally.
He grinned sardonically.
Guess it was my own fault.
Izuku's mouth dropped open, his brows rising to his hairline. Bakugo had done what? Here? He turned around but the blonde had long since disappeared from view. Any prior negative thoughts Izuku had regarding the blonde were instantly dismissed. A real-life hero, he thought to himself, finding an entirely new sense of admiration being birthed. But something was off.
Don't you want to pay him back?
Izuku asked innocently. Rick's grin disappeared.
I mean, I know that What, you're gonna ruin my ass too?
The man demanded, folding his arms and rearranging himself into an intimidating stance. Izuku's face fell. He was starting to see another side to Rick, and he wasn't sure he liked it.
No, sir.
He said. He was done with him for now.
Thank you for your time. I'll come back to give you my business card soon.
With that he bowed politely and walked away, his thoughts going a mile a minute. By the time he found the group again, the band was in their encore. Izuku took his same spot next to Kirishima and Bakugo. He tried to watch the performance but his eyes kept getting drawn back to the blonde, a smile flitting at his lips. He couldn't help it, he was starting to see the man in another light. Now that Izuku thought about it, Bakugo actually looked quite a bit like a superhero with his brawny physique and serious gaze. He imagined the blonde that night, holding his villain down, snarling threats in his ear to keep him complacent until the police arrived, and he felt his gut clench, a welcoming warmth spreading throughout his body. Bakugo seemed to have noticed Izuku's gaze, because his eyes suddenly shifted.
What? Thank you.
Izuku said. Bakugo was visibly startled.
What for?
Izuku smiled brightly.
For introducing me.
He paused.
And for passing my photographs along. I didn't get to say that earlier.
Bakugo paused.
I didn't do crap.
He said after a moment.
Crappy hair and pink face one of your photos. And danger over there wouldn't leave us alone.
Kirishima took the opportunity to interject, wrapping a friendly arm around Bakugo's shoulders.
Don't listen to him.
Kirishima told Izuku.
He liked them too. Trust me, if he hated your photographs, you'll be the first to know.
Katsuki shoved Kirishima off of him.
How about you shut up?
He demanded. His shouting caught Mina and Jiro's attention, and they drew closer to the sound. Izuku paused. Was there truth in Kirishima's words?
Liked my photographs?
He asked Katsuki hopefully. Even though he'd said they weren't that great. Katsuki met Izuku's gaze, his eye twitching. After a moment he broke the contact, choosing to instead scowl at the floor.
You're annoying.
He muttered.
Don't be so weird about it, stupid Deku. Oh,
Mina crowed triumphantly.
I knew it. He made you look super cool. Right, Bakugo? I don't need anyone to make me look cool, dummy. But he did. He did.
Izuku beamed. He had gained some sort of victory, hadn't he? He'd even gotten a compliment from Bakugo himself. Well, almost.
Eku did screw and all. That's not my name.
Izuku said suddenly, feeling revived and newly confident. Katsuki turned back to him and glared.
Huh?
Izuku wavered a bit, but he held his ground. This guy wouldn't punch him. He was a good guy, after all. Kaminari had gotten it wrong.
I said that's not my name.
Katsuki tilted his head, looking like he was ready for a fight.
Deku.
Izuku gulped.
You're going to give me a weird nickname?
He said, trying to sound confident and hoping he wasn't coming off as nervous as he felt.
I'll have to give you one back.
Jiro huddled in closer to Mina to watch. Her hands covered her mouth in anticipation. Katsuki was clearly unimpressed. He met Izuku with a challenging stare as he raised his beer to his lips.
Oh yeah?
Izuku was being called out. Damn it, he couldn't back down now. He stared long and hard at Katsuki's intimidating gaze, trying to think of something, anything, that might throw him off balance.
Kacchan.
Izuku said. It was the first thing that came to mind. Izuku had never seen a real-life spit take, but he hadn't realized just how messy they really were as Katsuki choked and spluttered, spraying Izuku's clothes with the beer he'd been nonchalantly drinking. One glance told Izuku that the blonde was absolutely livid. He was so red it seemed to have transcended the actual color itself and become purple. Izuku, wet and very much terrified, was ready to flee based on the singular murderous look on Katsuki's face. The only thing that stopped him was the howling laughter that came from the three witnesses to the event. Kirishima was doubled over from laughing so hard. He slapped his knee while Mina splayed herself over him, pounding her fist on his back, tears streaming down her face. Jiro was clinging helplessly to Mina, looking like she was about to fall to the floor. Izuku found himself stuck in the strange limbo of not knowing whether to run away or join in on the laughter. Bakugo, sputtering, took a step forward, and Izuku took a step back, prepared to run, but Kirishima stopped the blonde by rushing forward and grabbing Izuku by the neck, giving him a vicious nudge.
Midoriya, my man.
Kirishima howled. The girls piled in around him, laughing and poking at him interchangeably. Izuku kept his eyes away from Katsuki, afraid of what he might see.
I love him.
Mina moaned, grabbing her sides and giggling.
I think I might too.
Jiro said, rubbing her palms into her eyes. Katsuki stood still, his fists clenching and unclenching.
Nah, bro.
Kirishima said, releasing Izuku long enough to give Katsuki a hard pat on the back. Katsuki looked ready to deck Kirishima upside the head with his bottle.
Don't take it too seriously. But oh man, that was priceless.
He pointed at Midoriya and hiccuped.
I like this guy. He's got spunk. He should have come to your party.
Mina said between breaths.
Hell no.
Katsuki said.
Hell yeah.
Kirishima said. He looked back at Izuku.
I'm throwing a big Halloween party this Saturday.
He explained.
I do it every year. You should come. It's gonna be off the hook.
Izuku managed to straighten himself out, the two girls still clinging to him. The entire evening had been surreal, and now this?
I appreciate the offer,
Izuku said.
but I kinda told my friend already I'd go to this.
When Kirishima's face fell, Izuku reconsidered.
I mean, I guess I could come for a little while. Although I don't know how long I'll be able to stay. If you don't mind, that is. If he goes, I'm not going.
Katsuki said, glaring daggers at Izuku.
Oh, he's coming.
Kirishima said.
And so are you. Like hell I am.
Katsuki shrugged out of Kirishima's grip.
Screw all of you.
He said, glowering at Izuku.
Especially you.
He dropped his beer bottle and let it smash right there on the floor, causing a few people to look over.
And screw this place.
He shouted, flipping off the bar as he turned on his heel and stomped away.
Where are you going?
Kirishima called out after him. He started laughing again.
Away from you.
Katsuki shouted over his shoulder, not slowing in the slightest.
Have fun with your new pet. Alright, take it easy, man.
Kirishima shouted back. Izuku wasn't sure whether he ought to feel insulted, but after Katsuki left, The laughter started and didn't seem to want to stop.
Hey, you alright, man?
Kirishima asked as Izuku doubled over, all of the tension from the night's events releasing at once. He wasn't sure if it was nervousness, or giddiness, or joy. Maybe it was a combination of all three. He wasn't sure it really mattered. After laughing for a solid minute straight, Izuku finally calmed himself, wiping a tear from his eye.
I'm great.
Izuku said. He grinned.